The budget for 2017 was read by the government on the 2nd of March, which meant that prosecuting it would take a lot more time than would have been expected in other fiscal periods. But the government, having campaigned on a number of promises, essentially resetting the operations of the economy from a taxation-based one to one that focuses on production of goods and services. Clearly, we got insights of the strategies that the government put together, reducing a lot of taxes, pursuing some other reforms that they expected was going to support the private sector activity. What you have seen since March is some minimal recovery in the real sector of the economy. It's not up to appreciable levels that would have been expected. That's one. Two, the implication of that has been a reduction in the government's ability to mobilize the required domestic revenue needs to finance its usual expenditure that we typically would expect. And so that equally hasn't happened to appreciable levels that the government, would have thought about. Again, one interesting, innovative thing that this government has done has been finding strategies around financing the budget itself, and that equally they look to have done very well. And so if you look at the projections they made in March and the subsequent reviews we saw in July, I believe, there appears to be some consistency in the government's commitment towards realizing these objectives. The challenge, though, has been the extent to which private actors and other industry watchers or people who are watching the economy, how the goodwill they gave this government will actually translate into results if they prosecute their activities in line with the government budget and economic management policy we saw for 2017. And so for me, the worry has been the revenue basket bit, that the government hasn't been able to raise as much as is projected, and that some of us saw when the government started giving or talking about those concessions they were going to give to the private sector, that these things were necessary, but they were a bit too drastic because the government had to get an appreciation of the challenges that was confronted. But they went ahead and did that nonetheless. And so fast forward 2018, we would expect a certain consolidation on the gains because as we speak, the macroeconomy appears to have stabilized a bit. If you look at prices of goods and services, it appears to be moderating downwards because you haven't seen fluctuations that we saw before in the energy basket component of the price of goods and services. I'm sure usually when we see things like that, the ordinary Ghanaian begins to wonder because you may have been going to buying your things at the marketplace and maybe the prices may have been going up, but we haven't seen that as drastic as we saw in previous fiscal periods, and so that's a good thing for private sector and businesses. Again, we have seen some moderation in the rate at which the currency has depreciated over the last years. I think the last 4 years, you had an average depreciation that was in excess of 11%. Now we are doing something between 2 and 3%, and so that in itself is not too bad, and we would expect that these gains will be consolidated so they speak to the sort of strategies that the government is going to put together in the coming budget, which is for the budget for 2018.